So, right. Now that we've got the sending the quote, one thing we need to do is actually work out this, generating the quote. So one of the things you could do in this process here is you could actually generate the quote using business rules and logic. So you could say, well, I can create the rules. I can sort of say, well, if they're over this certain age, then calculate the quote this way. If they're, a smoker or a non-smoker, or whether their home is in a high-risk area or a low-risk area, you can build out a whole bunch of business rules to actually help with a quote. So, for example, I could create a rule that said, we could just say, well, if we got to check, well, if the quote is, if they're asking for a term of over 25 years, we could say we actually have a rule that says we don't have a policy for that. So we can create decisions and logic and business rules within the flow itself. So I'll show you that. So I can sort of say, a term to high, which is to say it's over 25 years. So I could say, let's create a rule that says that basically if to the answer of the question of term, they said that that was greater than 25, that it's just the term is too long, and we just simply want to offer them a quote on that basis. So we could add a rule like that into the system. We could just, after they complete that form, it then goes to this rule, and then the result of the rule could be to send them to a statement, which is saying something to the user, no quote allowed. And you could say, we cannot provide quotes over 25 years in term. Our bad. Sorry. And we could simply say, so if the term to high decision, the result of that decision is that yes, it is too high, then we can send them there. Or otherwise we can, kind of continue through. So you can create these decisions to kind of help you build in the business rules and logic for your process. So you can see here, if term is greater than 25, then proceed to quote not allowed. Otherwise proceed to, we haven't put anything in yet. So that's an example of creating a business rule. It may be that when you're creating your business rules that you, maybe the calculation or the rules get really complicated and you decide, well, actually, it's really a developer activity. Or it may be that you have a system that already does mortgage quotes and you just want to leverage that system. Whatever the case is, it may be that there are points where you may kind of go, well, actually, it's too complicated within the process. We'd like to actually offload this complexity to either an existing system or our developer to manage that. So I thought I'd give you a quick show of that at this stage, just to kind of give you a sense. So basically, in the design tool, so we might kind of go, well, we're mapping this process, go, actually, what, we've worked out, we need to do the quote. We think it's kind of too complicated. We need to work with a developer to help us with it. So we're kind of getting the bones of the process worked through now. We've worked out we can do the lead bit, we've got the search bit done, we've got the quote information collected, we've got some basic validation rule here to check some information. We are going to send them the quote, we're going to have to work that out later. We haven't finished the task review, we're still working our way through. What we do know is that we're going to need the developer to code up a mortgage quote for us. So let me flip to what a developer would do. So from a developer perspective, it's the same as before. A developer still writes their code in Apex, and it's no different now. And if the developer wants to call out to web services or do things like that, again, that's all part of what Apex can do. You can import all that sort of WSDLs and things. You can do all the usual stuff. You can code. All the power of Apex is available to you. The difference with the what we've added with the flow piece is we've created a plugin interface, and the plugin interface basically allows you to. It basically requires you to implement two methods. One is invoke, and one is describe. So if you look in the Apex documentation, I won't go through this in any great detail. If you look in the Apex documentation, you'll see that there's a whole section now on creating process plugins. And those process plugins will allow you to write extensions that the authors of a flow can then incorporate into their business process. So here's the code for creating the quote here. It's all coded away. Again, you have the power of Apex in order to do that. if you're interested, it's basically it's a map of values in and a map of values out. And basically all the implementation of how it all works is all just in the Apex code here. So the author of the business process doesn't need to be concerned about all the detail of how it actually works. It's actually just all done in the code here. So for an author to be able to leverage this, so the developer say, great, I've created your mortgage quote. You've said that you can give me the years and the amount, and I'm going to give you back the mortgage amount. That's what I'm going to do. So you don't worry about how it works. I actually have to call it to a remote web service. I have to do some calculations. It's all encapsulated in my code. But basically, as far as you're concerned, if you can provide me with the amount and the years, I will provide you back with a quote on the mortgage. So that sounds like a good deal. So the author now needs to know, okay, well, how do I incorporate this code into my business process? And the way that we do that is using this Apex callout plugin. So I'll just place that down now. So call quote. Okay. So basically, I just kind of go, okay, we'll call this Apex class, and I need to know a few bits of information. One is I need to know what it's called. So the developer has to tell me what the thing is called, and in this case, it's called mortgage quote. So mortgage quote. And then they have to tell me what the inputs are. And so I create a little table of inputs, effectively. So I have to pass this information to the developer. And so the developer will say, well, you need two keys in it, which is one is amount, and we can set that equal to what we collected for our amount. And we also need years, which is the total time in years that we also collected from our question in term. And then what you'll get back is the result. So again, we get a little table here of outputs. And they're telling us they've got something called mortgage. And we're going to put it in a little variable when we get it back, and we're going to call it, what do we call mortgage 2? And it's a currency. So that's a little bit complicated in terms of just the flow of actually doing that, but we're wiring it in. But we're going to do some work in terms of simplifying that. But basically, think about it this way: you need to know what it's called, you need to know what the inputs are, you need to know what the outputs are. If you have that much information, that's everything you need to know to call any Apex callout. From a developer side, you have the ability to get these callouts to do amazing things. You can call it to your on-premise applications, call out to credit validation services, call out to system diagnostics to check the network is up or down, or do various things like that. It's really anything you could imagine. From an author perspective, they can just sort of say, well, I'll collect the information from the user, I'll pass it to you, you do your magic, and then you tell me what the answer is. And then that answer can be used in rules and decisions like we did here to drive the user experience. So in this case, we're going to say if the term is not too high, we're going to go and get the quote, and then we'll get that mortgage amount back. So what we could do at this stage is we could sort of say, okay, well, basically we got that output back, which is that mortgage quote. And what would be useful is actually we could then say, well, actually there's another step in our process, which is we could say, are they happy with it? So happy. This is going to show you another capability in the software, which is I'm going to show you how we can do kind of dynamic feedback to the user, which is I can say, the calculated mortgage monthly amount is whatever we got back from our friendly developers. Are they happy to proceed? Or are you, or they, whichever you prefer. Okay. And then I can then sort of say, well, maybe we just make it as a yes, no response. So the user is either going to say yes or no. And if they're happy, which is to say that they are wanting to get a quote, then we'll send them down to the send quote. So if the answer to that is yes, we'll send them to the send quote. We'll probably then create that task, and then be done with it. Otherwise, we'll just sort of say, okay, done. Sorry, finish, no sale. Oop, done. Screen. Okay. So you can see we can start, building out how we want our business process to work. One of the things you're probably also realizing, if you're thinking about it, is the kind of language you want to use. So if you're in a call script, which is obviously a no-brainer style use case for this technology, is you may be giving instructions to the agent, or maybe saying what they need to say. Maybe if you're giving an insurance quote or a mortgage quote, you need to have very compliant language in terms of making sure that the sale is fully compliant with financial services regulations. Or if it's an online tool where a user is going through it, you might make the language quite friendly and very conversational, and not or it could be that if you think people will just need to get the flow done and there's no it's not really about end users, it's just about making the platform easier for your internal users to use. It may just be very short instructions. You kind of need to work out the sort of style of language you want to have in your business process. But you can see now we're kind of storming along pretty much here. We've created this whole flow. We're getting this lookup, a quote, we've got a business rule, we've got a call out to a bit of Apex code. We've got like this, this decision about whether or not we're actually going to send the email quote to them. And then we're going to create a task, which I might leave that for now. And then we're going to basically finish up the process. So let's just say the last thing we need to do is basically work out, we're going to send the quote, and then we're going to be done with the process, and then we'll run it, and I can show it to you deployed within Salesforce. So to email the quote, we did kind of part of it. We basically said we got the lead ID from that lookup, and we need this record ID in order to send the email. I know that kind of probably feels a little technical, that we need to get the lead ID, and kind of knowing what a lead ID even is probably feels a little bit uncomfortable to some people. And we're going to try and simplify some of that, but effectively this is where you kind of need to know a little bit about how Salesforce works in order to really leverage the kind of power that I'm showing you here. But effectively, we need that record ID so we can send the email. We then get a quote, the subject. We then created the body of that message, and we also created this attachment. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a file attachment called file.pdf. And I'm going to make the content what we call a resource, and I very quickly showed that to you before, which is basically just a bit of content you want to use in the flow. And in this case, this content will actually be used to create the document. So this resource will actually be the quote document. And in there, we can leverage all the stuff that we did, with our flow. So I can say, thanks for your time today. And I could put, Mr. and I could put in, I can even put in here what we got for our last name. When we did the lead lookup, I could have grabbed not just the lead ID, I could have grabbed more details about them, such as the first name, the last name, their address, things like that, and I could have incorporated that in here. We haven't got that. I put, we can offer you a mortgage quote of, and again, I can just incorporate that response we got from our developer for the mortgage. So again, I can include the information like that. And I could include clauses and binding bits, for contractual reasons or whatever. Let's just leave the quote as that. You can kind of get the point that we can do kind of dynamic content. So what this plugin will actually do is convert that quote that we just, hold on a second. It'll actually convert that to our document and attach it to the email and send it called file.pdf. Okay. And so that's basically that's basically going to send the email. So we've kind of got send it to this lead. There's the subject. These are the attachments, and then this is the actual body of the message, which is here, which is thank you for a quote today, and that's the email that'll be sent. So we don't support the templates currently. So effectively, you kind of have to write your email in here. And then once we're done with that, we'll just basically go to a done screen. Okay. And then we're done. So that is our full quotation process end to end. And that is like a hugely whistle-stop tour of how you can model a business process like a mortgage quote.